Hello, you're here with me today, Harrison Lewis, and behind me is the University of Aberdeen. Here we have the time and the resources available to look at some of the bigger questions in biology and address some of the issues that are current today. What we want to look at this video is conservation, and in particular the question that we want to ask is, have traditional conservation methods that aim to maintain biodiversity actually led to ecosystems that are artificial? So what do we mean by that? Well, does conservation still mimic nature, or has it led to ecosystems that are not sustainable without human intervention? Now, conservation biology relies on us to ask questions to improve the discipline, much like we're doing together today in this short video. However, before we go any further, it's probably best we know what conservation is and what it attempts to do. It may surprise you to know that conservation and ecosystem management has been employed for a very long period of time, as I'm sure my colleague Nick will inform you now.
The principle of human managed ecosystems has been around for millennia. We've constantly been managing ecosystems to give us what we want, and because of this, focus has now shifted towards conservation. The Egyptians were one of the first societies to regularly and intentionally manage their ecosystems, and over a 6,000 year period, their expansion had knock-on effects with a myriad of extinctions in the local ecosystem, with intentional removal of dangerous species such as lions and African hunting dogs.
Today, conservation is a little bit different. You and I might know it as an attempt to prevent human disturbance on nature. However, scientifically speaking, it actually has a definition. Conservation biology is a discipline that attempts to reduce the threat to biodiversity, whilst also maintaining genetic variation in an ecosystem. In other words, conservation attempts to protect all species, but most importantly, it attempts to prevent extinctions. So why conserve biodiversity? Well, high levels of biodiversity are actually synonymous with ecosystem health. And what I mean by this is that in an ecosystem full of species, their interactions sort of create a harmony for the community. If you reduce the number of species in biodiversity, you lose this harmony. Now, biodiversity forms the foundation of the vast array of ecosystem services that critically contribute to human well-being and our economy. In fact, it supplies us with clothing, food, water, and medicine. Quite remarkably, the cost of these ecosystem services, or products of biodiversity, were recently estimated at being worth more than $33 trillion a year. Today, terrestrial protected areas cover 12.2% of the Earth's land area, and marine protected areas cover 5.9% of the Earth's territorial seas. Together, they accumulate to roughly 8 million square miles, and this consists of over 120,000 protected areas. 10,000 of these areas are found here in the UK. Even with these protected areas, we are still failing to halt species decline and the regression of ecosystem services. Conservationists appear transfixed on preventing any changes to the nature reserves, and without natural corridors linking our protected areas together, the dynamic movement of the animals is restricted. This in turn prevents the natural evolution of the communities that you might see in nature. It can therefore be suggested that we have created novel or artificial ecosystems. In other words, these ecosystems have been created by man, and without human intervention would not be sustainable. Perhaps instead, there should be an attempt to look for new strategies in order to improve conservation biology. In order to best illustrate this current conservation issue, my colleague Gregg has headed down the road to the local nature reserve in Montrose.
I'm here at the Montrose River Basin, an area that covers over 750 hectares and is home to over 50,000 birds during the winter. This is because the daily tidal cycles here bring a rich soup of nutrients. The area was designated a site of special scientific interest and was also designated a local nature reserve in 1981, giving the area more recognition and protection to the species that call this place home.
One of these species that is particularly prevalent is the pink-footed goose, especially around the time of year of October. But to understand how they migrate here, we need to pop back to their homelands, found in Greenland and Iceland. The geese are capable of travelling up to 1,250 kilometres in order to reach suitable habitat, such as Morecambe Bay, a large estuary found in the northwest of England. It is believed that the population is roughly 390,000, and 90% of these geese are seen here in the UK. However, along the way, they need to stop at certain resting sites. Alternated land use and human interference has reduced the number of these resting sites. So now, only the protected areas really harbour suitable habitat for these geese. Montrose Basin is found on the northeast coast of Scotland, and with a large amount of arable land surrounding it, it is the perfect habitat for pink-footed geese. In fact, 25% of the British population pass through it, and that figure is already experiencing a dramatic increase. It has been suggested that this increase in geese population is linked to a decrease in biodiversity. Ollie has popped down to the visitor centre to ask the manager there a couple of questions regarding how big the increase in the population is and if there are any control strategies in place.
So I'm here today with Alison from the Scottish Wildlife Trust here at the Montrose Basin. She's very kindly offered her time to come and speak about the problems related to pink-footed geese in the reserve. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
So how big has the increase been in pink-footed geese over the past few years?
Well, we've been monitoring the geese for many, many years and doing the counts at dawn in the same ways from September through till December for many years, as I say. In the early 2000s, the numbers were peaking at just over 40,000. We got quite excited at that time. However, in 2015, the peak count was on the 18th of October and was 85,632. So more than double what it was 10, 11 years earlier.
Yeah. Is there any current management plan in place with regards to pink-footed geese?
On the reserve, no, they're included in our management plan,
Mm-hmm.
but we aren't managing them in a particular way now.
Is there any sort of plan in the future to manage the populations, or if the population keeps expanding?
No.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Whilst Alison said there are currently no management plans in place for pink-footed geese here at the Montrose Basin, their boom in numbers over the past 15 years has been linked to a decline in waded populations. Furthermore, with over 85,000 geese nesting on these banks behind me, they are undoubtedly changing and shaping the environment. Geese can defecate up to 90 times a day, and this alters the pH and water quality here. Therefore, is it possible for local management systems to allow this natural increase in geese whilst maintaining biodiversity?
It would appear that the answer to Ollie's question is in fact no. We can't have an increase in the geese population without there being a knock-on effect on biodiversity. Scottish Wildlife Trust therefore seem to be met by a decision. They can either cull the geese in an attempt to promote and maintain biodiversity, or they can let the geese population increase and hope that this doesn't have a dramatic effect on the waders in the reserve. Now that second option sounds more natural. However, the geese are supported by altered human land use outside of the reserve. You see, there's plenty of arable farmland, and this farmland produces crop, which in turn acts as a food supply for the geese. In fact, due to us humans, there is so much of this food supply that the geese aren't limited and don't compete. So either strategy that Conservation and Scottish Wildlife Trust employ will be an artificial form. We can deem Montrose Basin to be a novel ecosystem. So in summary, we have demonstrated that even on a local scale, conservation is artificial, and it produces novel ecosystems. These novel ecosystems are an issue. They're expensive to maintain and consume resources. And what's more, they don't promote natural ecosystem services. In this video, we hope we've illustrated how conservation doesn't necessarily protect natural ecosystem services. In a sense, conservation is outdated, but it's not all doom and gloom. Although we can't go into much detail in this video, there are other effective strategies that could be employed. One of these, for example, is that described by George Monbiot, which is rewilding. Rewilding attempts to associate humans with nature, rather than portraying us as a threat to biodiversity. We step away from managing these reserves and instead we look to stabilise the ecosystem and community. In doing so, the wildlife becomes self-sustaining. Today, the take-home message from this video is that conservation remains very much in our hands. In fact, I hope that we take full opportunity of it.